When a quiet black student became the target of a rich bully's cruel jokes, no one expected him to fight back. But when the bully pushed too far, he discovered that his victim wasn't just an ordinary classmate. He was a world-famous hacker exposing injustice. What happens next will leave you speechless. The high school cafeteria buzzed with energy that morning, students chatting loudly as they filled the long tables. The air smelled of coffee, toast, and something faintly burnt from the kitchen. Malcolm Jones quietly walked into the room, holding his laptop tightly. Unlike the other students, Malcolm preferred to blend into the background. His dark hoodie and simple jeans reflected his low-key attitude. He was new to the school and already noticed how the cliques operated. Popularity ruled everything. Malcolm wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here to focus on his studies and his tech dreams. He had a secret life most people would never guess. Online, he was known as ShadowCoder, a genius hacker admired for his ability to uncover injustice and expose corruption. But offline, Malcolm stayed quiet, not wanting attention. He'd already experienced too much judgment for his skin color and reserved personality. Across the room, Ethan Green sat surrounded by his usual crowd of admirers. Ethan was the complete opposite of Malcolm. His designer clothes, styled blonde hair, and confident smirk screamed privilege. He thrived on being the center of attention and had a reputation for making fun of anyone who didn't fit his mold of cool. Malcolm's quiet demeanor immediately made him a target in Ethan's eyes. "Hey, look who it is," Ethan said loudly, his voice dripping with mockery. "The new kid who's always glued to his laptop. What's he working on? Solitaire?" His group laughed, their laughter echoing through the room. Malcolm heard the comment but kept walking, refusing to engage. He'd dealt with bullies before and knew better than to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. He found an empty table in the corner and sat down, opening his laptop. His fingers moved quickly across the keys as he worked on a personal project, blocking out the noise around him. But Ethan wasn't done. He stood up, his ego craving more attention. He grabbed his drink and strolled over to Malcolm's table. "What's so important, huh?" he sneered, peering over Malcolm's shoulder. "Are you writing a love letter to your laptop?" Malcolm closed his laptop calmly and looked up at Ethan, his brown eyes steady. "Just minding my own business," he said softly. "Yeah, well, maybe you should find somewhere else to mind it," Ethan shot back, smirking as his friends laughed again. The scene caught the attention of a few nearby students, but no one stepped in. Malcolm gave Ethan one last look, his voice quiet but firm. "You don't know who I am, but you might want to back off." Ethan snorted. "Oh, I'm shaking in my boots, Shadow Boy." He turned to his friends, who howled with laughter. Malcolm's calm expression didn't change, but his mind was already working. This wasn't the first time someone underestimated him. It might, however, be the last. Ethan's harassment of Malcolm escalated rapidly, fueled by his need to assert dominance. By the second week, the bullying became more public, with Ethan performing calculated stunts designed to humiliate Malcolm in front of the entire school. One morning, Malcolm entered the classroom and found his desk covered in sticky notes, each one scribbled with mocking phrases like "nerd central" and "future basement dweller." The classroom erupted in laughter as Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed smugly. Malcolm ignored the commotion, carefully removing each note before sitting down. His quiet demeanor only seemed to embolden Ethan further. During lunch, Ethan staged another act. Standing on a cafeteria table, he loudly announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, gather round. Behold the legendary keyboard warrior." All eyes turned to Malcolm, who sat silently in the corner, engrossed in his laptop. Ethan strutted toward him, holding up a tray of food. "What are you typing over there, Malcolm? A love letter to your hard drive?" Ethan dumped a pile of fries onto Malcolm's laptop, earning gasps and laughter from the crowd. Malcolm calmly brushed off the mess, his composure intact. "You might want to clean this up," he said softly, his eyes locking briefly with Ethan's. The audience quieted. For a moment, there was an air of uncertainty, an unspoken realization that Malcolm wasn't reacting the way Ethan had hoped. But Ethan wasn't done yet. Later that day, Ethan took his harassment to social media, creating a fake profile under Malcolm's name. He filled it with fabricated posts, mocking Malcolm's intelligence and personality. "I'm so good at coding, but I can't talk to humans," one post read, accompanied by a poorly edited picture of Malcolm. The page spread quickly, drawing hundreds of views and comments. Ethan basked in the attention, unaware that his actions were about to backfire spectacularly. Malcolm didn't say a word. That evening, however, he logged into his laptop and began to dig. With every click and keystroke, he uncovered more about Ethan than the bully ever intended to share. A digital trail of poorly secured accounts, old posts, and hidden secrets began to emerge. Malcolm wasn't interested in revenge, yet, but he wanted Ethan to understand that actions had consequences. The next morning, Ethan walked into school, unaware that his world was about to be shaken. Malcolm sat in the same corner of the cafeteria, his laptop open as usual, a quiet storm brewing behind his calm exterior. Ethan laughed with his friends, already planning his next move, but Malcolm had already taken his first. Malcolm sat at his desk, surrounded by the quiet hum of his modest room, a space that belied the power of the mind within it. Most of his classmates saw a reserved, awkward teenager who preferred solitude. They didn't know that Malcolm was a prodigy in the world of computer science, a name whispered with admiration in ethical hacking circles. He was ShadowCoder, the digital vigilante who had uncovered some of the most corrupt practices of powerful corporations and organizations. The internet buzzed with tales of ShadowCoder's exploits. He had exposed multinational companies employing child labor, hacked into racist organizations to leak incriminating emails, and even shut down websites used for hate speech. Yet Malcolm's fame was purely digital. He had no desire for recognition in the real world. His anonymity was his shield, and he guarded it fiercely. His journey to this school hadn't been smooth. At his previous school, Malcolm discovered that the administrators were embezzling funds meant for scholarships. He couldn't stand by and let it happen. Using his hacking skills, he gathered evidence and leaked it to the authorities, leading to an investigation and the eventual closure of the institution. While his parents were proud of his bravery, they knew the risks of such actions. Threats and unwanted attention made it clear that staying hidden was crucial. They moved to a new city, enrolling Malcolm in a public school where he could remain anonymous. But keeping a low profile wasn't easy, especially with Ethan constantly provoking him. Malcolm didn't react, not because he was afraid, but because he understood the bigger picture. He had learned the hard way that every action had consequences, and he didn't want to jeopardize his family's safety. Late one night, as the weight of Ethan's taunts pressed on his mind, Malcolm sat at his laptop. The familiar glow of the screen was both comforting and empowering. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to look deeper into the school's system. What he found confirmed what he had suspected. Ethan and a few other students had their disciplinary records wiped clean by administrators. Complaints from other students were ignored, and faculty members who tried to intervene were silenced. Malcolm stared at the data, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He felt a rush of emotions: anger, frustration, but also determination. This wasn't just about Ethan's cruelty toward him. It was about the system that enabled it. As he sifted through the records, Malcolm knew he had to act, but not impulsively. He began to plan, knowing that exposing Ethan wasn't enough. If he wanted real change, he had to reveal the broader pattern of corruption and privilege. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Ethan's bullying reached its peak when he secretly recorded Malcolm in the locker room, sitting quietly with his laptop, and uploaded the video online. The captions mocked Malcolm as weird and implied he was a loner obsessed with his computer. The video spread like wildfire among the students, turning Malcolm into the target of relentless ridicule. Whispered comments, laughter behind his back, and outright stares became the norm in the hallways. Malcolm discovered the video during a quiet moment in class, his heart sinking as he read the cruel comments beneath it. Despite the humiliation, Malcolm didn't react outwardly, keeping his focus on his laptop. That evening, instead of succumbing to anger, he began meticulously gathering evidence of Ethan's bullying. Malcolm's sharp mind and tech skills proved invaluable. He uncovered incriminating messages, including Ethan's racist comments in group chats, and even retrieved school records showing how Ethan had been shielded from consequences due to his parents' influence. Malcolm was stunned to find reports filed by teachers that had been dismissed by the administration, all pointing to the school's complicity in enabling Ethan's behavior. The discovery added fuel to Malcolm's determination. The breaking point came when Ethan physically confronted Malcolm in the school hallway the next day. Smirking and surrounded by his group of friends, Ethan knocked Malcolm, laptop to the ground, laughing as it clattered against the floor. "What are you gonna do? Hack me?" Ethan jeered, drawing laughter from the group. Malcolm picked up his laptop, inspecting it for damage, and then locked eyes with Ethan. Calmly, he replied, "You'll find out soon enough." The icy certainty in his tone caught Ethan off guard, silencing the jeers for a moment. That evening, Malcolm sat in his dimly lit room, his laptop glowing in the dark. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he accessed the tools he had perfected as ShadowCoder. For Malcolm, this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. He compiled all the evidence he had gathered, carefully creating a video that highlighted Ethan's bullying, his offensive comments, and the school's neglect in addressing these issues. Malcolm's calm demeanor masked the storm of emotions inside him, but his resolve was unshakable. As ShadowCoder, he would ensure the truth reached everyone. Ethan and the school had crossed a line, and Malcolm was ready to draw the world's attention to it. The school woke up to chaos on Monday morning when an anonymous video surfaced online, uploaded by none other than ShadowCoder. The video, expertly edited and narrated, revealed Ethan's bullying in painstaking detail. It began with clips of his locker room taunts and racist remarks from group chats, paired with screenshots of the hurtful comments he had posted about Malcolm. The video also exposed the administration's failure to act on multiple reports against Ethan, highlighting a pattern of favoritism toward wealthy students like him. The video's tone was calm but cutting, its evidence undeniable. ShadowCoder called out not only Ethan's behavior, but also the systemic issues within the school, stating, "When those in power protect the privileged at the expense of the vulnerable, justice demands a voice." Within hours, the video had gone viral, circulating across social media platforms with hashtags like #JusticeForMalcolm and #ExposePrivilege trending nationwide. Students shared it among themselves, parents began calling the school in outrage, and even local news outlets picked up the story. At school, Ethan quickly realized he had become the center of a scandal. Walking into the building, he found himself the target of stares and whispers instead of adulation. Friends who had once surrounded him began to distance themselves, afraid of being associated with him. "This is all fake," Ethan blurted out to anyone who would listen, his face red with anger. "It's just some loser trying to ruin my life." But the overwhelming evidence in the video left no room for doubt. The school administration scrambled to address the situation. By midday, the principal issued a statement condemning bullying and announcing an investigation into Ethan's actions and the allegations of administrative neglect. Though the statement was meant to calm the storm, it only fueled the outrage, as many saw it as a performative response to save face. Ethan's fury boiled over during lunch when he confronted Malcolm in the hallway. "You think you're so clever, hiding behind a computer screen?" Ethan hissed, his voice dripping with venom. Malcolm, unfazed, simply looked at him and replied, "This isn't about me. It's about what you've done." His calm demeanor further enraged Ethan, but the growing crowd of onlookers forced Ethan to back down, retreating with a scowl. That evening, Malcolm logged into his ShadowCoder accounts to find an overwhelming wave of support. Messages poured in from students thanking him for speaking out, parents applauding his bravery, and activists commending him for shedding light on privilege and discrimination. Despite the storm he had unleashed, Malcolm remained grounded. This wasn't about fame or revenge. It was about accountability. Ethan, now isolated and under investigation, was beginning to feel the weight of his actions. For Malcolm, the tide was turning, but he knew this was only the beginning. The battle for justice was far from over, and the school community had yet to fully confront its flaws. The fallout from ShadowCoder's video was immediate and overwhelming. Social media platforms exploded with outrage as students, parents, and even alumni of the school demanded accountability. Hashtags like #JusticeForMalcolm and #ExposeEthan trended for days, sparking debates about privilege, systemic favoritism, and the consequences of bullying. News outlets picked up the story, and local talk shows featured discussions about the broader implications of the incident. "How many more schools are hiding similar issues?" one prominent host asked, amplifying the narrative beyond just Malcolm's case. At the school, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Students who once laughed along with Ethan's cruel jokes now avoided him entirely. His closest friends distanced themselves, wary of the backlash. Some even apologized to Malcolm, though their sincerity varied. Many were more concerned with avoiding public scorn than truly making amends. The once invisible Malcolm was now the center of attention, with classmates offering shy smiles or nods of respect as he passed in the hallways. The administration, under immense pressure, issued a formal apology and announced Ethan's suspension pending a full investigation. The principal's statement, delivered in an assembly, condemned bullying and promised systemic reforms, including anti-bullying workshops and a review of the school's reporting policies. But to many, it felt hollow. Students whispered among themselves, questioning whether the sudden change was genuine or just damage control to placate angry parents and the media. Ethan's life had taken a sharp turn. Once the golden boy of the school, he now faced isolation and humiliation. He spent his days avoiding the judgmental gazes of his peers and deleting hateful comments flooding his social media accounts. His parents, desperate to salvage their family's reputation, issued their own public apology, pledging to support Ethan in learning from his mistakes. But Ethan remained defiant, refusing to accept responsibility. "They're blowing this out of proportion," he muttered to himself, convinced that he was the victim of a witch hunt. For Malcolm, the attention was both empowering and overwhelming. While he appreciated the support, he remained focused on the larger issue. He knew this wasn't just about Ethan or his own experience. It was about changing the culture of silence and favoritism that allowed such behavior to thrive. Despite the progress, some classmates still viewed him with suspicion or jealousy, questioning whether he had gone too far in exposing Ethan. As the week went on, Malcolm noticed subtle shifts within the school. Students began calling out minor acts of bullying, and teachers made a visible effort to promote inclusivity in their classrooms. The staff even organized a town hall meeting for parents and students to discuss how the school could create a safer, more supportive environment. Malcolm attended, but chose to remain in the background, listening as others shared their perspectives. Though the immediate storm was subsiding, the ripple effects of ShadowCoder's video continued to spread. The school community was changing, slowly but surely, and Malcolm knew this was only the beginning of a larger journey toward accountability and justice. Ethan's once comfortable world had crumbled. No longer the school's untouchable golden boy, he found himself grappling with the reality of his actions. His parents, embarrassed by the public fallout, took swift action. They enrolled him in a mandatory sensitivity training program and assigned him to community service at a local tech workshop for underprivileged kids. Though Ethan initially resisted, he had no choice but to comply. His parents were adamant. This was his only chance to redeem himself. The first day at the tech workshop was a rude awakening for Ethan. Gone were the familiar faces of his privileged circle. Instead, he was surrounded by students eager to learn, kids who saw this opportunity as a lifeline rather than a punishment. Ethan's task was simple: assist the instructors and clean up after sessions. He sulked through the first few days, doing the bare minimum and avoiding conversations. But that changed when Malcolm walked into the workshop. Malcolm, now volunteering at the workshop to mentor aspiring young coders, was surprised to see Ethan there. Their eyes met briefly, and Ethan's face flushed with shame. Malcolm, ever composed, greeted the group without addressing Ethan directly. For the first few sessions, Ethan avoided Malcolm, sticking to menial tasks to avoid further embarrassment. But Malcolm's quiet leadership and dedication didn't go unnoticed. During one session, Ethan overheard Malcolm helping a young girl named Sophia troubleshoot a coding problem. Sophia, only 12, struggled with confidence but had a natural knack for programming. "You're closer than you think," Malcolm encouraged her. "Sometimes the hardest part is believing you can solve it." Ethan couldn't help but listen. For the first time, he saw Malcolm not as the quiet, awkward classmate he had bullied, but as a mentor who genuinely cared about others. A pivotal moment came when Ethan accidentally overheard Malcolm talking with another instructor. Malcolm explained why he volunteered, sharing stories of how he'd once been inspired by similar workshops. "There's so much potential in these kids," Malcolm said. "They just need someone to believe in them." The words hit Ethan hard. For the first time, he felt a pang of guilt, not just for bullying Malcolm, but for dismissing the struggles of others who didn't share his privileged background. During a break, Malcolm approached Ethan, breaking the ice with a simple question. "How's the workshop going?" Ethan hesitated, unsure if Malcolm was genuinely interested or testing him. "It's different," Ethan admitted. "I didn't think it'd be like this." Malcolm nodded. "It's eye-opening, isn't it? Seeing how much effort people put in when they don't have everything handed to them." Ethan bristled but didn't argue. He knew Malcolm wasn't wrong. For the first time, Ethan asked, "Why didn't you just call me out before?" "Like in person?" Malcolm's expression softened. "Because it wouldn't have changed anything. You wouldn't have listened. The video wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure people see what needs to change." The conversation lingered with Ethan, and over the following weeks, he began to view his role at the workshop differently. He started helping the kids with their projects, asking questions, and even taking on tasks he had initially scoffed at. Sophia, the shy young coder, became particularly attached to Ethan, who encouraged her with small compliments and guidance. One day, Sophia proudly presented her completed project, a simple yet clever game she had designed from scratch. She beamed as Ethan and Malcolm praised her work, and Ethan felt a flicker of pride he hadn't experienced before. It wasn't the empty satisfaction of mocking someone for a laugh. It was the genuine joy of helping someone succeed. Ethan's attitude toward Malcolm also began to shift. He apologized directly during a quiet moment at the workshop. "I was a jerk," Ethan admitted, his voice low but sincere. "I thought I was better than everyone and I didn't care who I hurt." Malcolm accepted the apology with grace, but didn't let Ethan off the hook. "Acknowledging it is the first step," he said. "The real work is proving you've changed." By the time Ethan's community service ended, he had become a regular presence at the workshop, even volunteering additional hours. His relationship with Malcolm remained professional but respectful, built on mutual understanding rather than friendship. Ethan's redemption wasn't instantaneous, but it was real. He still faced lingering judgment from his classmates and struggled to rebuild his reputation. But for the first time, he didn't care about appearances. He cared about doing better, not for validation, but because it was the right thing to do. With the attention from the viral video still simmering, Malcolm realized he had a unique opportunity to create lasting change. Using his online persona, ShadowCoder, he began focusing his efforts on larger systemic issues. He uploaded a follow-up video, not to revisit Ethan's actions, but to address the culture of bullying and racism in schools. "This isn't just about one person," the video explained. "It's about the systems that let these behaviors thrive and how we can dismantle them." The video struck a chord, sparking conversations in schools and communities nationwide. Students shared their own experiences with bullying and discrimination, using the hashtag #ShadowCoderForChange. The attention even caught the eye of organizations focused on combating systemic injustice, many of which reached out to collaborate with Malcolm. Despite his reserved nature, Malcolm agreed to give his first public interview as ShadowCoder. During the interview, Malcolm's calm demeanor and insightful commentary resonated with audiences. He spoke about the importance of holding people accountable while still giving them opportunities to grow. "Accountability isn't about tearing people down," he said. "It's about creating a chance to rebuild, stronger, fairer, and more compassionate." Meanwhile, Malcolm's work at school didn't stop. He decided to confront the administration head-on. Using his hacking skills, he compiled a detailed report exposing how wealthy students like Ethan had been shielded from consequences for years. The report included evidence of favoritism in discipline records, emails between administrators and influential parents, and discrepancies in how punishments were enforced. Malcolm sent the report anonymously to the school board and local media outlets. The fallout was immediate. The school board announced a thorough investigation, and the principal was placed on administrative leave pending further review. For the first time, students and parents began to see cracks in the school's long-standing culture of privilege. At the same time, Malcolm launched a mentorship program for students interested in tech. Partnering with local organizations, he began teaching coding workshops at the same youth center, where Ethan had completed his community service. The program wasn't just about learning to code. It was about using technology as a tool for empowerment and advocacy. One of the most inspiring moments came when Malcolm invited a group of students to participate in a hackathon aimed at designing solutions for social justice issues. The kids worked tirelessly, creating apps that helped report bullying, track accountability in schools, and provide resources for marginalized students. Watching them present their ideas filled Malcolm with pride. Despite his growing influence, Malcolm remained grounded. He continued to balance his quiet life at school with his online presence as ShadowCoder, knowing that both realms needed his attention. He also made a point to support students who reached out to him, offering guidance and encouragement to those facing their own struggles with bullying or discrimination. Malcolm's advocacy efforts extended beyond his school and community. He was invited to speak at a tech conference, where he shared his journey and the lessons he had learned. Tech isn't just about creating apps or writing code, he told the audience. It's about solving problems and making the world a better place. Every line of code has the potential to create change. Use it wisely. Back at school, Malcolm's classmates began to see him in a new light. While some still kept their distance, many approached him with apologies, gratitude, or questions about how they could help. Malcolm welcomed their efforts, though he remained cautious about trusting those who had once laughed alongside Ethan. Through it all, Malcolm stayed true to his mission, fighting injustice, one system at a time. His journey wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing. It was about building a community where everyone felt valued and respected. Months after the viral video and the whirlwind of events that followed, the school organized a special assembly to address the incident and its broader implications. The gymnasium was filled with students, staff, and even parents. The air buzzed with anticipation as Malcolm, who had been asked to speak, quietly took his place at the podium. Beside him, to everyone's surprise, stood Ethan. The once arrogant bully now appeared subdued. Dressed simply, his usual bravado replaced with a humble demeanor, Ethan seemed nervous as he glanced at the crowd. This was his first public appearance since the scandal, and the weight of the moment was visible on his face. Malcolm spoke first, his voice calm yet steady. "When I first came to this school, I wanted to stay invisible," he began. "I thought if I kept my head down, I could avoid the worst parts of being the new kid. But the truth is, staying silent doesn't make problems go away. It lets them grow." He paused, looking directly at Ethan. "Standing up for yourself is hard. Standing up for others is even harder. But it's necessary if we want things to change." The audience listened intently, many reflecting on their own actions, or inactions, during the bullying. Malcolm's words carried weight, not because they were loud, but because they were true. When it was Ethan's turn, he hesitated before stepping up to the microphone. Clearing his throat, he began, "I owe you all an apology. Especially Malcolm." His voice was shaky but sincere. "I thought my actions didn't matter, that they were just jokes. But they weren't. They hurt people, and I see that now." Ethan turned to Malcolm. "I'm sorry. For everything I said, for everything I did. You didn't deserve it. No one does." The room was silent, the tension thick as everyone waited for Malcolm's response. Malcolm nodded slowly, then stepped forward. "I accept your apology," he said, his voice steady but firm. "But words are just the beginning. Change comes from what you do next." The two shook hands, a gesture that spoke volumes. While they weren't friends and might never be, the moment symbolized progress. a step toward understanding and accountability. Together, they addressed the audience, presenting a joint initiative to combat bullying in the school. Their plan included workshops, open discussions, and a peer support program. "This isn't just about us," Malcolm said. "It's about creating a culture where everyone feels safe and valued." Ethan added, "I can't change what I did, but I can help make sure it doesn't happen again. That's my promise." The assembly ended with a standing ovation, not just for Malcolm and Ethan, but for the idea that even the most fractured relationships could begin to heal through accountability and effort. The events that unfolded at school had left a lasting impression, not only on Malcolm and Ethan, but on the entire community. Malcolm, once a reserved and overlooked student, had become an inspirational figure. His online persona, ShadowCoder, gained even more recognition as he continued to use his skills to advocate for justice. However, Malcolm wasn't content to stop there. With the momentum of his story, Malcolm launched a national campaign under the ShadowCoder name, focusing on anti-bullying, digital literacy, and inclusivity in schools. He partnered with tech companies and nonprofit organizations to develop resources for students and educators, aiming to create safer and more supportive environments. His mentorship program, introduced first at his school, quickly expanded. Students from across the country reached out, eager to learn from him. Not just about technology, but about resilience and using talents to create meaningful change. Meanwhile, Ethan embarked on his own path of redemption. After completing his community service at the local tech workshop, he remained involved, mentoring younger kids and helping them learn basic programming skills. The work allowed him to reflect on his actions and gave him a chance to rebuild his sense of self. Ethan's sincerity began to show through as he used his platform to share his mistakes and encourage others to avoid the path he had taken. At school, the culture started to shift. Inspired by Malcolm's courage and the public reconciliation, students and teachers worked together to establish clear policies against bullying and discrimination. Anonymous reporting systems were implemented, and the school introduced regular workshops on empathy and privilege. A diverse group of students, including Malcolm and Ethan, formed a council to ensure these changes were upheld. The impact extended beyond the school's walls. Media outlets followed the story of Malcolm and Ethan, framing it as a powerful example of how confronting injustice could lead to growth and understanding. Malcolm was invited to speak at conferences and panels, where he highlighted the importance of addressing systemic inequalities and empowering young people to be agents of change. Ethan, too, found his voice, sharing his story at schools and community events. "I'm not proud of who I was," he admitted during one speech. "But I've learned that it's never too late to start over. Change isn't easy, but it's worth it." One evening, Malcolm sat in his room, typing on his laptop. His latest project for ShadowCoder, a campaign to spotlight schools making strides in diversity and equity, was coming together. As he hit send on his latest post, a quiet sense of pride settled over him. He had turned his pain into purpose, proving that even the hardest moments could spark positive change. In the background, a notification chimed. An email from Ethan, sharing updates on their school's new initiatives and thanking Malcolm for teaching him the value of accountability. Malcolm smiled. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Together they had created a legacy that would inspire others for years to come.